Quick parental disclaimer before the start of this episode. It is an incredible interview. I hope you listen to it, but I am just giving you fair warning. Steve is amazing, but he uses colorful language from time to time. Nothing lewd or sexual or anything like that. He just mixes in some F bombs. So if you have kids in the car, fair warning, but I hope you get to listen to this.
And then they're like, why? And then they go on this fucking pilgrimage. Well, by that point, like your kids are fucking fucked. Your wife has left you. You're on the third wife, right? You're buying car after car, thinking like this is going to make you happy. And like, had you just done the work a couple of years before, you would have been in a very different place. It's Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett has taught all of us how to become billionaires. He has literally given the secret. Just nobody wants to take it. The secret is 50 fucking years. That's the secret, right? If you want to be a billionaire, do exactly what Warren Buffett says, starting at whatever he did, 12 years old. I got tired of telling myself lies and seeing my wife suffer and seeing my kid, like my kid was in therapy. My kid doesn't go to therapy now. She doesn't need therapy because I don't fuck her up anymore. Kids are pure. You know, I would say like, you want your kid to heal, do your fucking work. You want your wife to be happy, do your fucking work. You don't need to fix them. You need to fix yourself, right? And as men, it's our responsibility. That's what it means to be a fucking man, is to do your fucking work.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Saucetown Investor podcast. I am your host, Matt Cox, back with another episode, another really cool guest today. Our guest has been called a consciousness coach, guide, or a space holder. He simply sees his purpose as walking you back home to your inner knowing. I am joined by the founder of Two Buddhas Conscious Coaching, Steve Balin. Steve, how are you doing?
I'm awesome. Thanks for having me.
Man, it's great to have you here. For our listeners, I was chatting with Steve before we hopped online, and he's having a great day. He's smiling, a lot of big things going, and it frankly brightened my day. So I'm excited to talk to you for the next 30 minutes to an hour. Great to have you here.
Thank you.
And where are you joining us from today?
I'm in Philadelphia, right outside the city in Roxborough, along the Schuylkill River. And this is where we are. So if you hear some jet skis, it gets a little loud sometimes.
Yeah, beautiful view for those of us or those that are listening that do not have the video feed. Beautiful spot. I can hear birds chirping in the background. So for a Manhattan guy like myself, it's a pleasant change of pace. So let's get into it, Steve. Usually this is the part where I ask people a bit about their background and their story. Instead, I'm going to start us off. I'm going to read you a quote that someone said about you and kind of work backward into your story from that, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sure.
Here we go. This is a quote. I've watched Steve Balin live out a true hero's journey, one of the most dramatic personal transformations I've ever witnessed. He didn't just make changes on the surface. He dismantled his entire identity, went through a long, dark night of the soul, and came back with hard-earned wisdom to help others do the same. When I met Steve over a decade ago, he was ambitious, aggressive, and ego-driven, successful in many of the ways our culture celebrates, but disconnected from something essential. Eventually, that way of living stopped working, and he made a radical choice to step away from everything he had built and face the unknown. What followed was a profound and painful deconstruction of who he thought he was. So ton to unpack there. And obviously we're going to talk about Two Buddhas in your business later, but I think your personal story is deeply important for us to understand. So this quote's from a gentleman by the name of Justin. What did Justin mean here? Let's take it back. Let's take it back 10 years. Where were you in life and what were you doing when you were, quote, ambitious, aggressive, and ego-driven?
So 10 years ago, I was Justin Turner's partner. About that time, let me just think. So my daughter is 13 now. So I'd been with Justin 2 years. So previously to working with Justin, I was in a family real estate business. I I left that business, which was a first of many massive life changes for me. Justin and I partnered up with another gentleman, Steven Balin. Um, Justin was a CFA. He worked on Wall Street and got into real estate. And Steve Balin was a contractor, and I was an acquisitions guy. And so um, it was a time in my life where I was setting up a new business with two really fabulous human beings. It was probably the first time that I had been with just people I really loved in business, but who saw me, I think, more than I saw myself. And um, I was hustling, man. I was just doing deals. I was focused on my business. I was focused on making money, uh, creating. I think real estate's a beautiful ability to create. But I was, like he said, I mean, I was very much in my ego. I was not present with my family. I was just driven to succeed. And that was about it. Yeah.
So you're doing a bunch of deals. You're presumably making a lot of money at the time, and you had one kid. Then you said your kid's 13 now, or
Yeah. Sophia, when I started with Justin, we were starting over. Um, and Sophia was with me. My wife was working full time as a dentist. And Sophie was like, I would go and look at deals, and Sophie would be by my side. She was a little baby. I would go to banker meetings, and Sophie would be sitting on the desk. She was like my little partner. It was actually, while a very tough time, it was just not many men get the opportunity to really be with their kid and hustle. And I had both, and that was definitely a gift. Yeah.
so on that note, yeah, because from the outside, listening to your story, it sounds like you're doing really well in your career. You're doing well financially. You're getting to share some of it with your daughter, which is pretty cool. Like, what was because you talk about this was kind of a bit of a low point. Like, what was so bad about all of it at that time?
Well, it's interesting. I don't, looking back, for me at that time, I didn't consider it a low point, right? I mean, I was what
Mhm.
I would call unconscious. Uh, the world was mine. The difference was that my wife was suffering because of who I was. While I was with my kid, I wasn't truly present with my daughter. And energetically, I would not consider myself a safe parent. And safety is a complicated word. So, and then I think to myself, to who I was, to my body, to my mind, to my soul, I was not happy. I mean, I was 260 pounds almost. To give perspective, I'm 6 feet tall. I'm currently like 194. And I'm a well built, I was an athlete, but I was big. So again, the story in my head was I have everything. I'm happy. I have a pretty wife. I have a nice home. I have a cute kid. I have success. But that was all sort of just a mask that I wore to protect myself from how I truly felt inside.
So let's dive in a little more on two things you said there. You said your wife was suffering because of who you were, and you were not, to use your words, a safe parent. Let's start with your wife. What in what ways was who you were affecting her, and then talk about what that means to not be a safe parent.
Yeah, and there's so many things. But the one that comes up, my wife used to say when I would go to, so I would come home, I'd be on the phone, I'd be on the phone. I wouldn't really be there. I'd go to sleep. I would speak about real estate in my sleep. She would literally say, like, you're talking about square footages in your sleep. I would wake up at 6 a.m. I would leave the house. And that was basically it. And so when I was there, again, I was on my phone. And I was present. Like, you can be present with your family, or I was there with my family. I wouldn't say I was present.
Physically
Uh,
present.
yeah. I mean, I think that there are layers of understanding a woman and what she needs. I certainly didn't have any of them met. Um, so I think for my wife, and again, I want to speak from my experience. I'm not here to speak about others. Um, a woman, first and foremost, wants to be treated as a goddess. I don't think women always understand that, but she wants to be seen, loved, and protected. She wants all of you all the time. maybe not all the time. That maybe bad words. But I was not there. I did not make my wife feel safe. I was not present. My energy was chaotic. Um, I didn't really care about what was going on in her life. If I asked, it wasn't really, it was more, I'm asking to ask because that's what you're supposed to do. You know, I think that was the programming of what I saw other men do.
Like I checked
But
a box,
ultimately,
like, hey,
yeah,
babe, I asked you, we're good now. Like, yeah.
yeah, lot of box checking. You know, and I think it's in every level of my life. I mean, my sex life was not about her; it was about me. It was about my needs. I mean, it was very much my world, and she just lived in it. And so, I think at a certain point, with women, they learn to accept that, and especially when you have young children, um, they go into survival mode. So the goal of a woman at that point is protect my child, protect myself, do what I need to do to survive. And I think that if you saw who we were and friends saw who we were, it sounds worse than it was. But when you're really willing to look at yourself and to look back at what was happening, I'd say that my story is not dissimilar to many men, especially many driven men. So that was, you know, my wife's life. Um, she knew how to smile because she had to, because if she didn't smile, I would look at her like, what's fucking wrong? Right? You have everything. Why would you ever not be happy? Um, but she wasn't.
Yeah, and I think sometimes there's an idea that like because you're not we hear the stories of people that are off the rails, right? And to not have the best relationship with your wife doesn't mean you have to be like have an alcohol problem and you're cheating or it can just be something as simple as you're not giving her what she needs. And I think it's a common story. I don't know if this was you, but you always hear the term um with your wife or kids, like, I'm doing this all for you, like all
Mm-hmm.
this money is for you, and they don't. Yes, and we'll talk about finances later, not to finances matter, but there's a certain amount of money that it doesn't matter anymore. They want you to be there. Did you feel like you were filling that void, maybe where you were lacking in other areas? You were like, well, you have a nice house and you have a bunch of money and we get to, I can buy you whatever you want.
Um, well, you know, it's interesting. I can remember when I worked for my family business, that was my story that I'm doing this all for you. And my father was very successful and created that life for my mother. And my wife, who's just an exceptionally strong woman, her response was, I don't give a fuck about your money. I didn't sign up for money. I signed up for
Yeah.
you. And so that ship never sailed with my wife. And my wife, you know, was blessed to build her own career. She never needed money. She needed me. And I think that, you know, at any level, I would say that I know some exceptionally happy people in beautiful marriages, and they combined probably make $90,000 a year. So there's a lot of story about what is happiness and within this construct and what is it that we need and to survive. And if you're really willing to be in truth with yourself, you can dispel pretty much all of it. Um, you know, for example, you're in New York, like, you know, if I was in New York with the journey that I've taken, I might have moved to Omaha and lived in the podunk town and we would have had a better life. Like, you don't have to live in New York City, right? That's a choice. So we make choices in life, money being one of the most silly ones that we end up making.
So going back to that quote from Justin, you said you dismantle your entire identity. What does that mean specifically? Not just at a spiritual level, what does it mean? But like literally, what actions did you take moving forward that changed your identity?
I might have to let my dog in, but well, I mean, the first one was my construct identity was built on real estate. So my family is you know, a semi well-known family in Philadelphia. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to move that.
No worries.
You know, my it was important. I mean, I we were a real estate family. Real estate was a part of who we were, and so the first step of that dismantling was taking away the business. The first business was the one I when I left my father's business, and then the second one eventually was taking away the one that I had. Um, So that identity of being a real estate guy was gone. That
So you sold them,
reputation.
or what did you do? You sold them?
Well, I did something I wouldn't recommend anyone does. I divested at an insanely low discount to get out. There was a part of me that knew I had to step away. There was a lot of trauma around real estate for me because of my family business, and I just basically walked away and handed the keys to my partners and said, "This is yours." Um, again, like when you look back, I can remember when I left my father's business, and one of my best friends, who's now not, he was at the time he was a very good friend, and now he's an exceptionally wealthy, successful real estate guy who I wouldn't wish anyone was that man. He's suffering. But anyway, I remember him sitting with me at coffee when I told him I was leaving the family business, and he said, "You must be the dumbest motherfucker I've ever met." He said, "I had to work for everything. You're going to inherit it, and you're walking away from all of it." And to me, it was a simple choice. Now, logically, it was the dumbest thing from a construct perspective you could ever imagine. Why would you do that? Right? I needed maybe 10 years till my dad retired. Um, but I just couldn't. There was a part of me that said, you need to go. You need to make a choice. Um, that was the first one. The second one was leaving the second business. Um, but to be honest, none of the actual decision itself wasn't hard.
Was there a moment where this hit, or did you just wake up one day and you're like, I'm getting out of this? I mean, what?
With the first business with my dad, the moment was that started. It was over a week. Um, we were in Atlantic City with my family. It's a story I'm fine to tell publicly. And my sister asked to use my wife's phone, and she gets the phone and she's on the internet, and she says, "Why are you looking at divorce websites?" Like in front of everyone to my wife. And I just about lost my shit. And we got in a massive fight that night, and that's when she told me, like, she was pregnant at the time with our daughter, and she's like, "This is not what I signed up for." Um, I remember going back to my dad and explaining, the business needs to change. We need to change everything. I need to change who I am, and I really projected a lot on my father, and that was his fault. It was, I took on a lot of responsibility. I took the role of, my dad used to say, in real estate, we have two rules. Rule number one is don't lose the money. And rule number two is don't forget rule number one. And so the fiduciary responsibility of investing people's money was very important to me. And that's all I cared about. My wife didn't care. And my father's position was she just needs to wait it out. And, and that's when it hit me when he said that I was done. I mean, I tried to change the business first. It wasn't my place to change. That didn't turn out well. And then I just said, I'm done. And I think I gave 2 weeks notice, and I was probably out in 2 days. Um, so that was that one. With my other partners, um, it was about a year before COVID, and it was a year before COVID. I had started doing my work, um, and I was doing some nonprofit development work because my partners were sort of maxed out on what they could handle in the business. And then it just hit me like I need to double down on this work that I'm doing. And I slowly started to slip away. And then COVID happened, and my partners were exceptional through COVID. And I realized how hard they were working. And I just didn't want to work. Like I was like, I'm doing what I need to do my work. And that's when I just gave them the business. And, they wrote me a check, which was a fraction of my value. But for some reason, I was just so fucking grateful. I was like, thank you for letting me go and for taking the responsibility to our investors and stabilizing the business during COVID. And they did well. Nothing, we did well through COVID. But yeah, it was basically over again a week or 2 week period. And I was blessed because again, like I had a wife who understood the value of the work, right? She wasn't like looking at like, oh, we're not going to have this or we're not going to have that. She was just like, this is what's best for you. And she truly loved me and she wanted what was best. And so she signed up, and it was a fucking ride she took for 5 years that I went on this journey. So I wouldn't be where I am without her.
What were when you told your when you were selling out to your partners for what you said was a fraction of what you were worth? Were they was there any moment where they kind of like, dude, are you sure you want to do this, or what was that conversation like?
Yeah, yeah. They were a little bit. They also explained what they needed me to do if I wanted to stay, right? Like they were like, we need your help in this if you want to stay. And you know, I was just really clear. This is what I want. And they knew that I was serious. Um, it's sort of like, when someone tells you something, there's that you ever see Goodwill Hunting and he's at the baseball game and he's supposed to go watch Fisk hit the home run and he tells his guys, I got to see about a girl, and they just
Hmm.
let him go. And Damon was like, well, why would your dumbass friends say that? And he's like, they just knew. My partners just knew. Um, and there's no regrets. Like they're going to do well. They're going to make a lot of money. I'm happy for them. I'm still best friends with both of them. Um, it all turned out perfectly.
That's
Yeah.
amazing, man. I can tell you have no regrets, no resentment, none of that. It's just it was a chapter and it's closed. So I want to ask you about again, kind of going back to that quote, ego and ambition. I'm of the personal opinion that everyone has an ego and that a certain amount of ego is actually healthy. And I think a certain amount of ambition is healthy as well. First off, agree or disagree, and then why?
I mean, the ego question is something that's a complicated question that we could spend about 1,000 hours on. I would say in this construct, yes, ego is what creates identity for the most part, right? This I of who I am. Um, I don't believe we need ego to be ambitious. Um, I would say that I'm in a point right now in this new business I'm creating where I'm very ambitious, but that's being driven by my soul. And, I think ambition to me, when I think about ambition, it is an egoic word, which means I have to work hard to be successful. I don't think that I work very hard. Now, I probably put in the same hours you do, but I don't stress. I don't worry about my work. I'm not thinking about the money. Sometimes I do, honestly. Sometimes I think, I still have some ego. Like I'm fucking human.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between purpose driven work, service. Like you can be in service in real estate and make billions of dollars and truly do it from your soul. You can also be in real estate and do it from ego, make billions of dollars, and you will destroy your family. You will destroy your kids and everyone around you, your employees, and you will say that you're successful. You build a legacy for yourself. I would, and I would say that most of those people would never agree with me. And that's just where they're at, and that's okay. But there's definitely a difference between, when you have two people who take the same path, and one takes it from love and one takes it from fear, which I would say is more ego based, we could say. Again, I don't want to judge the ego. I think that's nothing that the universe or God creates is bad. It just is. But they can go down the same path, make the same amount of money, whatever that is. And one person has the heart attack, loses the wife, his kids are in fucking therapy, and the other guy is just fucking smiling all his way to the bank. Same amount of work, same amount of financial success. It's just driven by something different, right? And that's what most men that I see in this space at these high levels are struggling with, right? Like, what does it mean to be successful? What does that actually mean in this life? What does it mean to win? Right. And a lot of us are just playing the wrong game, which is why you get to this point. I mean, I've been privileged to be around some very wealthy people at a young age and to see men with everything, right, that the construct says is important, and to see that at the end of the day, they're not happy. And then they're like, why? And then they go on this fucking pilgrimage. Well, by that point, like your kids are fucking fucked. Your wife has left you. You're on the third wife, right? You're buying car after car, thinking like this is going to make you happy. And like, had you just done the work a couple of years before, you would have been in a very different place. And probably, by the way, I will also tell you that I've seen with clients of mine who are in real estate, guys who are at very high levels, that they're making more money now than they've ever made, working less, happier, more balanced in their life, right? Because they're doing it from love, not from fear. And a lot of that is around addressing their trauma, understanding themselves, why they do the things they do, right? Like for me, building wealth was because my dad did it. I wanted my father to love me. I wanted him to see me as a success, right? I think my father did the same thing with his father. So that's from fear, right? If I don't be successful, nobody will love me, right? It's a program. And so when you begin to do the work and start to dismantle these programs, you start to see, wow, like that's why no matter how successful I am, I just want more. I need more, right? We keep chasing the dragon. And in a lot of respects, it's like I look at people on the main line, wealthy people, it's where the main rich people live. And I look at people in Kensington, that's where the, people doing meth live. And it's like, they're no different. They're all chasing the dragon, right? They're just doing meth and they're doing Xanax, right? Like it's just one drug's prescribed and one drug's illegal, but they're both suffering, right? They're just one's house is a lot prettier and one's house is on the street, but they're both suffering. And that's the problem is like, you know, we're just medicating the issue with our success, with our drive. We're not dealing with the underlying issue. I'm not saying that wealth is bad. Wealth is great. I plan to build a lot more wealth in my life. Like I want to have nice things. Like it's nice to go on nice vacations. It's nice to have a nice home. Like these are nice things. Why wouldn't you want those things? But when those things own you, when it's not enough, when I need the next renovation, the next vacation, it's like chasing the fucking dragon. I want more, more. There's not enough life to live. Like, that's a game that you'll never win. I promise.
So you mentioned these guys you see where you say if they had taken this seriously 2 or 3 years ago, they'd be a lot better off. And now they're finally dealing with it. Now that they've lost their wife, their kids hate them, etc. I have a bit of a thesis about humans, and maybe it's a little bit cynical, but I tend to think people only learn from personal experience. For those guys you mentioned, it's losing their wife or kids. I mean, your story was close. It's fine. You're finding divorce websites on your wife's phone. There's a million self-help books out there. We can read about, money can't buy happiness, hedonic treadmill, all of that. There's a Jim Carrey quote I love, and he said, "I think everybody should get rich and famous and do everything they
Yeah.
ever dreamed of, so they can see that it's not the answer." So
Yeah.
all this stuff is out there. If life was a self-help book, we would just go read the book and we'd implement it. But I tend to think, I mean, all these books are written by guys and gals who have reached that point of whether, like you said, divorce or losing your kids or whatever. Is What's your opinion on this? Can we gain this perspective without reaching the proverbial mountaintop or breaking point and realizing it isn't what we thought it was? Do we have to get there in order to have that realization, or can we avoid it altogether?
So I would say this, right? And I should say this in retrospect to everything I said. If I knew the truth, the ultimate truth, absolute truth, I would be God, and I'm not God. So everything I say is just my lived experience. So I want to be really clear about that, right? I don't know. I'm just speaking from lived experience. Now,
Yeah.
the simple answer I would tell you is I think yes and no. Um, every soul has its own journey, right? It's got its path, it has its karma, it has its past life stuff. Like it's going to go the way it's going to go. I do believe that there are people who can break cycles, break patterns before really dark things have to happen. I've seen it. I've worked with those people. There are other people that I've tried to work with, and no matter how much I try to show up, it doesn't matter. They're just they need to hit that bottom, right? Um, I didn't hit bottom. Like bottom would be my wife leaving me. Bottom would be
Right.
living in a fucking on the street. Okay. My worst case scenario, I was living in a decent apartment. It's not bottom. That's fucking privilege, like real privilege, right? And I hate that word. I shouldn't even use that. Privilege is such a misused word. Um, but
Let's get into that. How is privilege misused? That's an interesting question.
well,
I think about that
I
a
think
lot.
that privilege is used, and I'm probably gonna piss some people off here, but this is just my truth again, so sorry. I think privilege in this construct is used a lot in the terms of like white privilege or wealth, or being a man, right? I was with a good friend of mine who's black, and we were talking about privilege. And he has a very he's always been very enlightened, I would say. No mental illness. He had a lot of family trauma, but this is a guy who just made his way through things. Like really impressive human. Um, and he grew up in a very tough neighborhood, right? I grew up in a wealthy neighborhood, wealthy parents, lots of privilege, right? I'm white, I'm a man, I'm decent looking, I have a great education, but I had massive levels of mental illness as a child, right? So my construct, my perception of reality was as dark as it could possibly be. I would, so people look at me and they say, well, you have all this privilege. And I'd say, I'd much rather be the black guy in the ghetto who has the same mind and like sees the world the way it actually is than the way that I saw the world, right? There are people who come from Holocaust families, right? There are Jews who have hundreds of millions of dollars, hundreds, right? And they're scared to buy like a $50,000 car. Okay. They have all the privilege in the world, but in terms of freedom, like privilege equals freedom. That's what real privilege is. So privilege is a mindset. It's not what you are. That's a construct belief. Now, the reality is yes. Like, is it easier to be a white man in America? Fuck yeah, it's easier to be a white man in America. Is it easier to be a white woman in America? Yeah, it is. Okay. So there are things within the construct that do make it harder and easier. But privilege to me is freedom. It's a mindset. Privilege is a mindset. And I don't think you can categorize it by the construct beliefs of wealth or whiteness or being a man. And I think that what that does in the system is it tells people who are suffering, right? Like rich white men, that they're so fucking privileged. All these people are like, oh, you're so privileged. And they believe it. And then they're like, I'm fucking fine because I'm rich and white, but they're not fine. And then those people who are actually suffering end up hurting other people because hurt people hurt people. So the system of like shaming people who have quote unquote privilege actually impacts the rest of the world in a very negative way. So as you can probably tell, that word triggers me a bit. um, I don't resonate with that word. I am frozen or something.
Steven, you there? I lost you for one
I
sec.
can't
Did you
hear
finish your
you.
thought?
Yeah, I don't know where you lost me, so I can't speak to that. Where did you lose me?
No worry. I mean, you just finished up your thought about privilege. So, no, I agree with you. When I think about privilege and like looking at myself, I think privilege for me is I grew up in a house with two parents who I'm best friends with. Like to me, that's what privilege is. We weren't poor, we weren't super wealthy. We were middle class basically. We always had food on the table. We didn't go on fancy international vacations. But that's what the older I get, because I just thought all parents were like that because that was my lived experience. And the more people I encounter as I get older, I realize like not everyone has that relationship with their parents. So like when I think of privilege, that's kind of how at least in the context of myself, that's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I would resonate with that. I mean, here's the other thing about where it's very dangerous to judge people's privilege. So I'm not going to speak to my personal trauma, certainly online, because I want to protect those around me. But if you knew my real trauma, I don't think there's one person on this world who would want to be me, right? But again, from the outside, a lot of people would want to be me. So we don't know what goes on in people's heads. And in truth, most people don't even know their own trauma. Like a lot of trauma that happens before, the age of 12, the mind basically disassociates, you forget it all. And it does impact you. You just don't remember it consciously. So it's very important. It's something I try to work on myself is not to judge where people are at because we just don't know. Nobody knows what someone's going through. Right. So to call out someone's privilege is just fucking ignorant. And I speak to myself because I do it sometimes. I'm not, you know, Like I still have ego, and I'll see something, I'll be like, that fucking privilege, whatever. And like, I don't know his story. I don't know what he's suffering with.
Hey guys, we're taking a quick break, but before we get back into it, if you're enjoying this episode, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps us to keep bringing you more valuable content. And if you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, don't forget to leave a review. Please, it makes a huge difference. All right, let's get back to it. So let's talk about now a little bit more about your company, Two Buddhas. For someone just listening to this podcast that hasn't looked you up or anything, just at a high level, what do you, I don't know if you want to do like an elevator pitch, but like at a high level, what do you do and who is your customer?
I don't have an elevator pitch, so I can't do one. But I would say that my job is to help people seek their own truth or wisdom, right? And then integrate it so they can be fucking happy, live in joy, and have heaven on earth. And that basically might be, in their business, it might be with their wife. Like there's some part of your life where you are just not fucking living in love, that you are not free, right? I don't know what part that is, but it's there, right? Um, and my job is to guide you, right? To support someone in finding those answers for themselves. And then building the tools that can sustain those answers. So rather than being a therapist who stays with you for 20 years, my goal is to get you the fuck out as soon as I can so that you can be your own healer. Right? Like we are we're perfect inside, all of us. It's just about understanding who we are. And that's part of this game of what Two Buddhas is. So the name is literally the answer to your question. So the idea of two Buddhas is this idea. So Buddha is an enlightened being, right? And the idea is that when I'm with a client, there are two Buddhas. It's the best of us. I'm not saying I'm an enlightened being. I'm saying that in each of us is an enlightened being, right? And so I'm not here to tell you what you don't know. I'm here to remind you of what you've forgotten. You're no different than me, right? So it's really about empowerment. Now, what I do and how I do that is more complicated. So my client, I'll just speak to that first. So I spent 6 years. I started coaching maybe about 3 years ago, and it was a hobby. And honestly, it's been a hobby for probably till about 6 months ago. Um, I didn't go back to school. If you look at my, things at the end of my name, right? Instead of PhD, I have SOLOF, OFD, OWF, right? Which is the School of Life and my own fucking work. Like that's my degree. I spent 6 years and probably more money than you would spend on graduate school working on myself. And so during that time, it helped me understand who is my client. And the simple answer is my client is me. That's who my client is. So I have multiple parts to the business. I would say my private one-on-one work, my bespoke work, is dealing with men exactly like me and their spouses. And sometimes those men are women, right? Because the role can change. It doesn't have to be the man who's the leader who's honestly traumatizing the rest of the family. Sometimes it's
Neglecting,
Yeah,
like, yeah.
sometimes it's the woman. Sometimes it's women and women. Sometimes it's men and men. Like again, it's more about masculine, feminine. It's more about energy than it is about the construct of a man or woman. But within this patriarchal system, it's mostly men. That's my experience. So it's the men, it's their wives, and it's their adult children. I do have people I'm bringing on now to work with younger children. That's not an area I feel safe in because I think that's something you need much more credentialed work. Um, but yeah, I believe in working with those men and their spouses. So I do a lot of couples work, I do individual work, and then family work. Um, but within that, in that sort of container, I'm also using a team of people for different work. So I've got, IFS therapists, and I have somatic healers, and I have medical intuitives. And so there's a multitude of other practitioners that I use, all of which I have personally done work with. So there's no one in my team that I have not actually experienced, as I would call it, their chocolate. Like I've tasted all their stuff. I know it's quality. I believe in them. There's one gentleman I recently brought on for a client who needed someone quickly. I did not get to work with him, but I felt aligned and it turned out to be amazing. So he's an acupuncturist, um, as well as, by the way, like regular MDs. People do craniosacral work. So, I'd say I'm a generalist. I'm definitely the one who's guiding the process, but at times specialists are needed. And when that happens, within my team, I'll bring that person in. What's different about how my work is versus a traditional therapist, who some people would call me a therapist or a spiritual guide, is that everything stays under the two Buddhas umbrella. So, for example, um, let's say that you just did some work with the therapist, right? And a lot of stuff came up for you. The next thing you're doing is you're going to talk to the somatic work or work with the somatic worker, that's body work, right? So the notes of the therapist get put into the system. And so the somatic person knows what happened in the prior session. So, for example, let's say that there was some sexual trauma. Um, in that respect, the body worker knows maybe not to touch that part of the body or knows how to be more gentle. And so everyone is talking to everyone, which in the traditional Western model, that never happens, right? The body, everyone's separate, everyone's doing their own thing. It's not integrative in terms of its healing process. So we try to really build an integrative process. So that's sort of the bespoke 101 product. It's a little bit more expensive, but it works. On the other side, what I'm trying to do is more community based work. So my mission is to build community, to bring people together, to make things accessible. Certain events that we're doing, we have a money is not a fucking problem policy. And while we don't believe in sliding scale, which is a sort of a progressive term people use, which just basically means you're discounted because you're poor, our position is
Right.
everyone has value. And so, for example, we just had an event. It was like, it wasn't cheap. There was someone who wanted to come. They didn't have the money. They paid their portion. And then they had a skill set that was great. It was in social media. She's fucking amazing, this woman. She ended up doing work for me. It was a great exchange, right? So I got paid. The practitioner got paid. She got a job. Like everyone won. And then the last part of the business, beyond the workshops and retreats and private retreats and workshops that we're doing, um, is like my baby, which will probably be a couple more years, and that's to create what I'm creating for the wealthy for the poor. So utilizing AI, different technologies, as well as the brain power of all these practitioners, putting that into a technological platform that allows someone who's paying a lot of money to bring that to someone who can only pay $7 a month. Um, Ultimately, that's the scale that I want to go to, where we can make a larger impact. Um, and those are the three pieces of the business.
What's something you've learned from your, I don't know if it's a particular customer or multiple, but what's something you've learned that was maybe a little surprising from working with your customers?
We're so much more alike than we think we are. The patterns are not that different. There's a guy actually in GoBundance who gave me a great piece of advice. I'm not going to name his name, but he's in my chapter. And he basically said, Stephen, once you pick your client, you'll recognize that the patterns are very similar. Now, this is a guy in finance, no psychology background, but he really nailed it. Like you see that people are very similar, um, and that everyone is really beautiful. I think that's a surprise. Like I've had some men come in who I was like, this guy is going to be a fucking dick. And then he gets into a safe place where he recognizes, what is probably honestly my greatest skill set is that I have no judgment. You could tell me anything. I'm not going to judge you. And people become who they actually are. The armor comes off, right? That ruthless business guy who just destroys everyone else is actually this beautiful, beautiful human. And I think that actually happens a lot. Like there's still a part of me that doesn't believe it's possible. And then you get to see their soul and you're like, oh, this is why I do the work. So I can see that, you know?
Let's stop on that for a second, because you talked about like the ruthless business guy, and there is an idea, I think, in business in America, in cutthroat capitalism, that to do really well in your career on some level, you do have to be kind of a manic killer instinct, willing to trample people. Um, Ignoring whether that's good or not, I don't think it's good, but let's just put that to the side for a second. Do you think somebody who's a killer business person comes to you, does all this work on themselves, are they going to be as good at their job afterward from a pure capitalistic standpoint?
No, they're going to be 10 times better.
Yeah.
100%.
Say more. Say more.
At a spiritual level, what you understand is that we're all one. Everything is love. And love is the most powerful thing that exists. There's a guy who I'm not gonna remember his name or the whole story, but I remember he had a lot of PR. He had this big company and he decided to pay all his people like a minimum amount of money, which was a lot. It was like everyone made at least $70,000 or something like that. And everyone thought he was nuts and that his business would go bankrupt. And it ended up being super successful. Happy people, okay, do good work. Now, someone would say, well, I paid this guy a lot of money and he screwed me. Now, it's more than just paying people. It's about culture. It's about energy. It's about frequency. So, yes, in my experience, now here's the problem that if you're going transitioning from being this ruthless guy, that probably means that you hired people who are a lot like you. So everyone's just a mirror, right? So if you try to change, your people might not change. You might need to end up firing everyone over time. Or so it's sort of like in a marriage. I say to my clients, if you're in a marriage and you start doing your work, one of three things will happen, right? So let's say it's a man I'm speaking to. One is that your wife will see that you're doing the work and she'll want to do the work and you'll have the marriage you want. That's the most ideal scenario. The second one that happens is you do the work. Your wife doesn't want to do the work. That's the employee who doesn't want to come on board, right? What ends up happening is you realize that this person is not for you. You're playing at a very high level and you're going to go find or match with your next partner, right? Option three, which is what a lot of businessmen do, is they think the problem is their employee, not them. So they fire the employee, which is divorcing the wife. They go out to find a new employee, which is finding a new wife, and they will repeat the pattern. Inevitably, they will get the same person, right? So it's a process to reposition your business. It takes time, right? Now, that's why you hire the right people who are not in your company. And you don't hire consultants who are like you hire consultants who live in a little bit more light, right? If you, again, like that's the fear is that people go, there's a guy in GoBundance, not going to name his name, and he went out to build a business. He was in total fear building this business. Okay. When you're in fear, you attract fear or you attract sharks. Sharks love blood in the water. And he attracted sharks,
Yeah.
right? And they went in, they sold him a bill of goods knowing he was in fear. He wrote a big fucking check to get them to do what they wanted, and they fucking botched the job. Right. So, yes, love always wins, but it is a process. It is not overnight. You cannot build this house with sticks. It takes bricks. And I see it in my clients. I see the ones who walk away. So, like, for example, in this process, and it happens, same thing in the business world. So, I'm probably the only coach in the entire world who has this program. I've never met a coach who does what I do. So, in my 3-month container, you pay everything up front. And after the first month, if you're not happy, I will refund your remaining 2 months. But there's a caveat to that. If I'm not happy and I think you're fucking around, I can also bow out and I will refund your 2 months. In my six, I have another container. It's 6 sessions. Pay up front. If you're not doing the work, I can get out in 2 sessions. If you feel I'm not doing your work for you, notice how I said that. If I'm not doing your work for you, which is what most people think I should do, then they can get their money back
Right.
too. Like
How many times have you done it? How many times have you canceled after a month or after 2 sessions?
3.
One, obviously, you're not going to share
No, I'm not going to share.
details, but you just felt like they weren't. They thought you were just like a a fix all for them without
Well,
them
I,
doing
I
the
no,
work.
I've also been dropped. I've been dropped more than I've dropped someone else. So 3 times, 2 times I was dropped, 1 time I dropped someone. And let me tell you, it's the greatest money you can ever get back. And I don't say that from judgment. People are where they're supposed to be. So to your point of, can people get there without the pain? Right? I mean, in the past, I've had 2 men that I took on almost simultaneously. Right? I remember sitting with this one guy, and he had this massive transformation. He's telling me how great I am and how beautiful the work is. And I said, let me be really clear. I didn't do shit. Okay. I know this because there's another guy who just bowed out the same time you started. Okay. I did the exact same fucking thing with him that I'm doing with you. And the only difference, the only variable difference is you. It's not me. I'm the same guy. When people are ready to do their work, they show up. And sometimes people think they're ready and they're not. And so that's why I set these parameters up for them to get out, because if you're not ready to do the work, it's an issue you find in the psychedelic space a lot. People take too much psychedelics, they open up for too much truth, they're not ready for it. And then it basically sets them back even further from where they started. So we have to be careful with the process of healing, whether that be in your business, right? Your marriage, your personal work, with your children. If you want to get there fast, you need to learn to go slow, right? And in this world that we live in, we're not built on slow, right? We're built on fast. But if you look at any super successful guy who, I mean, is really successful and truly happy, I guarantee there's not one guy who went fast. He built his business the hard way, right? Like, I mean, and you'd have to really look at his psyche, to look at himself, look at his family. But obviously the best investor in the world, we know who that is. It's Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett has taught all of us how to become billionaires. He has literally given the secret. Just nobody wants to take it. The secret is 50 fucking years. That's the secret,
Yeah.
right? If you want to be a billionaire, do exactly what Warren Buffett says, starting at whatever he did, 12 years old. Said,
Everybody wants a hack,
yeah,
and the hack is just doing the really simple but hard thing. We talk about that a lot. There's simple and there's hard. Most things are, as far as achieving success, are very simple, but that doesn't make them easy. It's doing the boring thing that no one else wants to do and doing it over and over and accepting that it's not going to happen overnight. And almost no one has that. I mean, Warren Buffett's the one of the best examples, but most people are not wired that way. We're wired for instant gratification as humans.
well, I mean, look, Warren Buffett came from a different era and he has obviously his own unique soul. I think Warren Buffett was incarnated to be a teacher, to show what, you know, massive levels of wealth, how they can be created, and also how they don't have to have power over us. Yes, he has a $50 million jet, but yes, he lives in the same fucking home playing pinochle or whatever he plays, right? His entire life. Like this is a man who has principles and values, right? Who is truly happy.
Yeah.
And I would tell you, I'd be curious if I ever talked to Warren Buffett, I'd be curious to ask him, was it ever really hard? Like, was it ever hard?
I think he'd say
I think
no.
he would too.
I think he'd say no.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think he truly was in alignment with his soul's purpose, right? And
Yeah.
he listened, right? The same thing goes, the guy, I'm going to blank on his name, who started WebMD, who's a billionaire and a super spiritual dude. He talks about flow and the universe. And, I'll say this last part, I know we're wrapping up soon. I used to love David Goggins. I mean, he's just a fascinating man to watch, just period. I mean, what a character, right? But what I recognize is that what David Goggins is the best at is breaking through resistance. The problem is that resistance is not meant to be broken through. Resistance is something to tell us there's something wrong we need to look at, right? David just learned to fucking bust through. And what that's achieved for him is tens of millions of dollars, right? Success in his books, the ability to run 30 miles a day, but he has a fucking broken body. He has no children. And I don't think he's married. And if he is, he's finally getting married at 45. Again, I'm not here to judge. I'm just to give perspective in that Fighting through life is not what the universe or God has meant for us. We're not supposed to, it's not supposed to be hard. And if it's hard, you're doing something wrong. That I will say across the board.
But what if David Goggins' easy is hard? Like that's what he was meant to do, you know?
So that's a great point. And I do think David Goggins' sole contract was to be exactly who David Goggins is, because there's no other
Yeah.
possible way he could be. I mean, like, the guy is unstoppable. But I think that where people get in trouble is what he does show us is what humans are capable of. And that is important. But if you try to embody the mindset of a David Goggins, that's not possible. There's one David Goggins.
You can't Yeah, you can't be him. You can't just read David Goggins' book and be David
Yeah.
Goggins. He's wired that. It's who he is. It's his
Yeah.
identity. He's
But
wired
if
that
you
way.
look at,
You can't be.
right, if you look at, though, his story, right, the trauma, this man went through some deep shit, right? He's still running from his dad. He's literally still running from his father, from the pain. I mean, that's what he did. Him and his mother ran, and he's still running, right? And he'll continue to run until his knees finally break. If you ever listen to him talk about his knees, like, he wrap up my knees and run 30 miles and I can do it. Like, that's fucking crazy, right? That's crazy because he hasn't dealt with his deeper stuff. And again, I'm not here to judge David Goggins because he's changed the lives of far more people than I have. But it's just important to witness that all these guys out there, including me, don't believe the hype. Listen, listen to yourself, process what they're saying. The shoe fits, wear it. If it doesn't, throw it away. But, like, the greatest teacher you'll ever find in life is your true essence. It is yourself. It is your higher self. That is what I try to teach people. That if there's one thing I hope to teach people in this life, it is that the truth is within them and nobody fucking knows better than you. The problem is that what people think they're listening to is not their self. It's a story of who they become. It's an ego construct, right? And that's the work is dismantling. As I dismantled myself, it's the dismantling of your story, of your construct. And by the way, not all parts of my construct are horrible. There was, my parents did some really beautiful things. My father was a very successful hotel developer. And, I can remember as a kid, my dad developed the nicest hotel in Philadelphia, 25 years running. I lived 2 blocks from it. And, I could have been this rich kid who, like, told everyone what to do. Like, when I went there, my dad said, everyone is sir. You treat everyone with respect. And I did. And he taught me, like, you're no better than anyone. And my father taught me amazing things in life about how to treat human beings. He also taught me some fucked up shit. Right. So, like, you figure these things out. Like, again, it's not black and white. It's very gray. We are gray. And so the more you get curious, the more you do your work, the more you're willing to recognize that you don't know, the more you find yourself, the more you find happiness, the more you find joy. Right. Like, I can't tell you, and I almost want to cry. Like, I have the greatest life in the world. I love my wife so much. I love my child. I couldn't feel these things before. I couldn't cry for like 20 years. I couldn't cry because I wasn't allowed to cry because the pain of what was inside was way too deep.
I've heard other people say that. Like I didn't cry for a decade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not special, right? So, like, you look at my life, just like Goggins, I went through some shit. And, I've realized, like, Goggins probably has it. I didn't do this just for me. That's why I left real estate. That's why I do what I do. Because if I just did this for me, that's a lot of fucking pain to go through for one person, right? I don't want other people to suffer. Like, I want you to have heaven on earth. I want you to have a fucking amazing marriage. I want you to go out and be a child with your wife and play. I want you to have your kid want to hug you all the time, not because you tell them to hug you, right? There's so many of us. I see it in these pictures on Facebook, these people talking about how great their families are. And look at the child's face and tell me, what does that face tell you? Is that kid want to be in that picture? Does your wife really want to hold your hand? Men will tell themselves a lot of stories, not because they're trying to brag to their friends, but because they're trying to tell themselves that they're doing the right thing. I got tired of telling myself lies and seeing my wife suffer and seeing my kid, like, my kid was in therapy. My kid doesn't go to therapy now. She doesn't need therapy because I don't fuck her up anymore. Kids are pure. I would say, like, you want your kid to heal, do your fucking work. You want your wife to be happy, do your fucking work. You don't need to fix them. You need to fix yourself. Right? And as men, it's our responsibility. That's what it means to be a fucking man, is to do your fucking work. Not to make money. My wife made plenty of money for us. For years, my wife made the money. I didn't make the money. She made the money. She didn't worry about money. Being a man was not about making the money at that time. Being the man was about being a fucking leader, taking care of my family, and but doing that by taking care of myself. So, I'm getting on my pulpit, but like, I'm just tired of fucking men looking at everyone else. No one else is the problem. If your wife is a problem to you, let go of that. If your kid's the problem, let go of that. Look inward. I give you my word, okay? My kid was in therapy. My kid had issues. My wife was disassociated. All the things you could think of. When I did my work, I changed my life. I deconstructed myself. All of that went away. And now I have the life and the wife and kid I do. You can't buy that shit with money. You can't pay off all the best doctors in the world. That doesn't exist. You have to be the leader in your family. Legacy is not what you leave them financially. It's not even what you do for them. Legacy is what you don't leave them. It's the work that you do that they don't have to carry on, because it will carry on. If you look at the lineages of families, the work that is not done passes to the next generation. I see this with every client. True legacy. Your kids will build their own wealth. You don't need to give them money. Give them some money, because cushion is important. If your kid wants to be an artist, it's okay to give them some money. Take care of your fucking princesses, right? If you don't treat your girl like a princess, she won't marry a fucking prince. You treat her like a piece of shit, she'll marry a piece of shit. Like, this isn't complicated stuff, but we don't want to look at it. So I'm off my pulpit.
No, it's powerful, man. And that is a level of letting your ego, because I think there is an idea when I don't have kids myself, but my kid is messed up. No, I need to pay to send them to therapy. No, you don't. It's likely it stems back to you, or my wife is an issue. Well, have you looked in the mirror recently? And I mean, that's super powerful, man, to come to that realization. This stuff all stems back to me, and then make those changes in yourself. So, Steve, I know you have a stop here. Do you have time for like two final quick questions?
Yeah, I do. There's just one thing I want to say, because I'm speaking a lot of pulpit kind of talk, and I just want to be clear. My work's not done. I am not perfect. My wife and I
Yeah.
still get in fights. Like, life happens. Like, until you are an enlightened being, which I'm not, um, life is going to be what it's going to be. So I'm not here to tell people what they should do. I'm here to just really, and maybe it sounded like I'm speaking from my lived experience. I'm speaking from what I've done. Like, I've done this work. I'm doing this work, and it's possible. And my path doesn't have to be your path. There's a lot of paths. Like, there's a lot of religions, but they all lead to the same place if you take the right part of that path. Right. So what I'm saying might not resonate with you. That's okay. Find what resonates. You know what love feels like. And if you don't know, go find someone who does. Okay. Like, but it's possible. So yeah. So ask your questions, please.
So that's a good transition, actually, because you said you're still working on yourself. So let's just scenario, it's 10 years from now. It's August 4th, 2035. What do you hope is different about yourself?
Man. I mean, that's such a, first of all, whatever answer I'm giving you is purely ego based because who the fuck knows? Um, I'll tell you this. In 10 years, what do I hope is different about myself? I hope that I just live in more love in every present moment. I hope I live by three words now. And if I can, so here's what I want. I can tell you in 10 years, I hope in every present moment, which is every second, I am humble, I am grounded, and I am present. And if that's my life, then I probably have achieved most of what I want.
I love it. Before we let you go, Steve, people that want, I don't know if you're on social or what, if people want to follow you, I'd love for you to share that. And then for anybody that wants to um, look at being a part of your program or working with you, you can share that as well.
Okay. So my website is twobuddhas.co. That's the number two Buddhas, Buddhas.co. My Instagram is the same. They can go there and book a discovery call. The discovery call is free. You can also, there's a mailer if you want to look at workshops or other things that you're interested in men's work. We're about to do a men's program that'll start in a couple weeks. It'll be a small container, 6 to 8 men, where I'll be coaching weekly, and then everyone will also have a private coach that they'll get weekly, which won't be me, but someone again who I've worked with, who I trust and respect, will be their coach. Um, I have a current women's group I'm doing. We'll probably start another one in a couple months. And then we do private work. So yeah, they can reach out on the Instagram or on the website. I don't really have a social media kind of presence. I don't, my business is basically 100% referral. You're the first like public thing I've ever done. So
I'm honored.
yeah. Well, the universe, does what it does. So you show up.
All right, Steve. Well, thanks again for making time for us today. Really enjoyed this conversation, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, man. You too.
That is a wrap for today's episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Saucetown Investor. If you got value from this, drop us a comment and let us know your thoughts. Did you have a big takeaway? Is there a topic you want to see us cover next time? Is there a guest you want to see interviewed? DMs are open. Business is at Saucetown Properties, and my personal, you can DM me personally, is at the real Matt Cox 4. We'd also like to ask you kindly to please like and subscribe. You can also follow along with the Saucetown Investor blog. That's mattcox444.substack.com. Thanks again, guys, and until next time, keep investing and stay saucy, Saucetown.